In this video, we're going to talk through some new best practices for the Save Warrior None community to use on Twitter. And we're going to talk through in a couple of different steps. We'll talk about the action steps first. So if you just want to get those and get on with your day, you can. And then we can talk through the technical details about how we created these findings for folks who want to get into the nitty-gritty. So what are the action steps for best practices? Number one, smaller accounts in terms of number of followers tend to do worse on Twitter in the Save Warrior None fandom. So help these accounts get bigger. The easiest way to do this, check out the hashtag any time of day, the Save Warrior None hashtag, and follow other people using it. Follow people that you're not currently following. Make it a goal to follow 5 to 10 new people a day on Twitter. There's thousands of us, so there's no shortage of new people to follow. Number two, use as many hashtags and handles in your tweets as you want within common sense. Don't hashtag every word because that's just hard to read. But there's no indication that using too many hashtags dampens your engagement, and tagging your new friends that you just followed in step one is a great way to broaden your engagement. Number three, be sure you're using the two main hashtags, Save Warrior None and Warrior None, always in every tweet. While it's not part of this particular study, a previous study we conducted with the Parrot Analytics data indicated that they're only really using the proper name of the show in their algorithm. And so to take advantage of that, we want to make sure that we're using the Warrior None hashtag. And four, tweet as often as you want, especially when it comes to replying to other people on the hashtag. Hit that like button on their tweets and then reply. Have real conversations with others on Twitter. And don't worry about how fast you're tweeting. You're not going to get penalized for having real conversations. So those are the action steps. Go do those things. Now, let's talk about how this all came about. The Save Warrior None community has a bunch of misconceptions about what represents Twitter best practices for maximizing key outcomes. The analysis we did seeks to dispel those specific misunderstandings and provide some revised best practices. Now, what are we doing with this? How do we come up with this? Well, we used a pretty simple data source, 3.8 million of our own tweets, collected via the Twitter API using the hashtag SaveWarriorNone. The data timeframe is December 27th, 2022 through February 4th, 2023. So it's recent, it's fresh data, and made sure they were deduplicated by ID. So what are these misunderstandings that we wanted to tackle? Well, there are a few of them. Number one, there's a belief that using more than a certain number of hashtags is bad, gets you marked as spam, gets you shadow banned, etc. Number two, tweeting within a certain period of time before your prior tweet will get your account flagged as spam. And number three, accounts under 100 followers have different, more restrictive rules. So how did we do the analysis? Well, using these misunderstandings as a starting point, we took our corpus of 3.8 million tweets with the following fields: username, timestamp, tweet text, reply count, retweet count, like count, quote tweet count, and the number of followers. From these initial fields, we engineered, which means we used software to create additional fields: the number of hashtags used in a tweet, the number of handles used in a tweet, total engagements, which is the sum of likes, retweets, quote tweets, and replies. Time between tweets we calculated. We had created a flag called spam, which is a measure of whether the current tweet is within 120 seconds of the previous tweet by that same user. 1 if true, 0 if false. Tiny account, a measure of account size and whether the account is above or below 100 followers. 1 if below, 0 if above. Hour of day as a numeric variable, and day of week as a numeric variable. We dropped the correlates, such as individual components of engagements, to avoid covariance issues, which, if you're not knowledgeable about data science, generally speaking, if you have two variables kind of march in lockstep, they can screw up a lot of these data science and machine learning tools, so you want to knock those out. From the engineered data set, we dropped in non-numeric fields, got rid of those, and performed what's called a lasso regression with the GLMNet engine in R. GLMNet is a popular machine learning framework. Using the Tidy Models library, which is a software package. We selected root mean squared error, or RMSE, as the penalty measure to choose the best model. All the parameters were automatically tuned with the tune package in R, and once the final model was selected, we extracted the variable importance and rescaled it to a 0 to 100 scale. If that sounded like a whole bunch of words, the technical folks, the data science folks, will know what that means. And for everybody else, feel free to Google these terms and stuff. And it's pretty fascinating how this technology works, because this is some of the technology that controls how artificial intelligence and machine learning software interacts with you in things like recommendation engines. So what do we find? Let's take a look at the results. Now, the reason we use lasso regression is it has this thing called variable importance, which shows us the relative importance of different variables. And it's useful for lasso regression. It's useful because it not only tells us whether a variable had importance, but also what its sign was, a positive or negative contribution towards the outcome, which is engagements. The outcome we selected was engagements. What are the characteristics, the variables that may lead to more engagements, that have a strong positive or negative correlation to total engagements? So number one, topping the chart, tiny account. The outcome here, that lovely pink bar, salmon, I guess, indicates that accounts below 100 followers, and the value was 1 in the table, has a negative outcome on engagements. This means that accounts with more than 100 followers have a positive outcome. So smaller accounts don't get engagements as much as larger accounts do. Variable 2, number of hashtags. This tends to go against the misconceptions floating around. Total engagements correlates very strongly with the number of hashtags used. In other words, the more hashtags you use, within reason, the better. Using more hashtags does not negatively impact engagement. Number 3, spam. So we define spam as a user sending one or more tweets within 2 minutes of the previous tweet. As with the previous variable, this is counter to the misconception floating around. Accounts which tweet within 2 minutes of a previous tweet get more engagement. And so I think it's safe to say this misconception is debunked. Variable 4, followers. Unsurprisingly, the more followers you have, the more engagement you tend to get. And number 5, number of handles. When you @mention people in your tweets, this drives engagement. And the more you use, the more engagement you tend to get. The remaining 3 variables, hour of day, time between tweets, and day of week, had no predictive power. That means they don't affect engagement positively or negatively in any statistically significant way. So tweet whenever you want, on any day you want, doesn't matter, won't change the outcome whatsoever. And again, don't worry about that time between tweets. These findings sync up well with our overall understanding of how Twitter works. In a very technical 2021 academic paper, Twitter published some pretty solid information about how their underlying core architecture, something called temporal graph neural networks, operates. The short version from a very long paper is that time is a key part of how Twitter decides what is relevant. And the people around you, the people in your network, also strongly impact your experiences on Twitter, and you impact theirs. That means that the stronger your network is, the more people you follow, the more people who follow you, the more impactful Twitter is for your account. So if you're trying to get the word out about convincing people to save the show, you need to build up your account. So let's review those action plans. Number 1, smaller accounts do worse, so help those accounts get bigger. Please follow more people on the hashtag. 5 to 10 a day minimum. You will get flagged if you follow like 100 within like 15 minutes. So 5 or 10, maybe an hour if you want to be aggressive. 5 or 10 a day, bare minimum. Use as many hashtags and handles as you want within reason, right? Within good old-fashioned common sense. It doesn't hurt, and it seems to help. Be sure you're using those 2 main hashtags, the Save Warrior None hashtag and the Warrior None hashtag. Always. Every tweet that's relevant to the campaign, those 2 hashtags have to be in. And feel free to add additional ones. If you see a hashtag that's trending and you can incorporate it into your text, and have it make sense, by all means. If a certain sporting event is happening and you can make a relevant tweet that incorporates that hashtag plus the 2 core ones, go for it. More isn't gonna hurt. And again, tweet as much as you want. There's no indication that it hurts, and there's a good statistical indication that it helps. Have real conversations with people. If you're on one of the Discord servers, I would encourage you to maybe take some conversations you've had with people on Discord and ask people on Twitter those exact same questions to see if you can have that same conversation or a better conversation with the folks on Twitter. And yes, there are plenty of people on Twitter who are outside our community, outside the supporting the show, who might be a little less pleasant to deal with, which is a challenge that Twitter is not doing particularly well to address. But the goal is to create conversational volume, to let people know we're not going anywhere and we are having conversations with like minds, and a lot of us on Twitter. So those are the action plan steps you need to take to maximize your use of Twitter. And again, this is not heavy lifting. This is just a few operational changes. We've got a nice graphic that you can print out, or maybe make your desktop wallpaper or your phone wallpaper, just to remind you of the steps that you can use to make your impact on Twitter felt as much as possible. So thanks for tuning in. Be sure to follow all the relevant accounts on the hashtag. I'll see you out there.